Do you communicate not good like? Well, you're in luck. Because today we're going to talk about how to communicate effectively. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast.
Oh,
I'm
Jesus.
Randy. That's Danny.
What's up,
didn't,
Randy?
yeah, didn't see that coming, did you?
No, I think it was a curveball. Definitely a curveball.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
communication is pretty critical because it turns out that a lot of happiness in life depends on relationships, and relationships depend on communication. So, have you ever struggled with communication?
Yeah, it's funny because it is super important, but it's also really hard. Like, especially when it's like, I don't know, I think most of us we tend to like rush through things and like say things we don't mean or like just fail to say what's actually on our mind. Like we're terrible at it because we're afraid of other things, I think. Like we're afraid of hurting people's feelings, we're afraid of consequences. But instead of like actually just getting it out, we end up like, going around in circles or just like totally not saying what we mean at all.
Yeah, because we're like designed to avoid pain, and a lot of communications can end in pain, especially if they're not done effectively. Which
Yeah.
is why we have this quick fix today. We're each going to share 3 tips for how to communicate effectively. I'll go first. My first one is listen twice, talk once. You see, you're given 2 ears and only one mouth. So
Mm.
it's easy to remember that you try and listen twice as much and talk only once as much. And yeah, because that way you can maybe have a chance at understanding what the other person is trying to communicate to you.
No, I think that's a good one because like I most of the time, right, we're so concerned about what we're gonna say next that we like shut off listening at all. So if you really try to listen twice as much, you're likely to hear them at least that once. All right. That's a good one. I
Mm-hmm.
like that. Yeah. Forces you to just, take a step back. That goes really well with my first one too, which is just slow down. I think a lot of times when we're communicating, we're trying to rush to the point. We're trying to rush to what we want to say. We're trying to rush to like whatever conclusion we want out of the conversation instead of actually like communicating. And I think that's a big part is just slowing down.
Yeah, that's a great point because how often, like literally, how often are you just actually listening to what the other person is saying as opposed to waiting for your opportunity to talk?
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
that's a good one. My second one is watch nonverbals. So they say that a large majority of our communication is nonverbals. And so, pay particular attention to that. Not only the other person's nonverbals, but also your own. What's your body saying? What's your face saying? What's the maybe the tone of your voice saying? All these things can mean even just the environment that you're in. What's that saying?
yeah. That's a good one too, because it's funny, like so much of how we communicate to others has nothing to do with actually verbal communication. And we think that communication is all verbal. We fail to remember that like it is the faces we make, how we interact, like actually responding correctly to other people's cues. All that takes a lot of work to actually be aware of. So I like that one. My next one is be honest and direct. Just say what's on your mind, say it clearly, and try to be honest. This is hard. This is a harder one, at least for me too, because I feel like, especially when it's like stuff like with relationships or like uncomfortable things, the knee jerk is to like, kind of you massage a little, make it better, rather than just be direct.
I mean, I struggle with that one. How do you be honest and direct when your partner's like, "Does my butt look big in this?" It's just like,
It is a tough one. It's hard. Even too, like, when you really want something, like, even like a raise at work, instead of like going around, like, around the world to get to the point, just saying it. And it's like you can get there so much quicker, but it is hard because we all think the consequences are going to be terrible.
mm, yeah. So my last one is validate. I just read this book called I Hear You, all about validation and how a large majority of communications, people don't actually want your advice. All they really want is to be validated, which means that you can relate to their emotions and then justify seeing their emotions from their point of view. And that's really what most people want, but we do it completely wrong because especially guys, we so often want to just offer a solution, and that's
Fix
like
it.
the first
Yeah.
thing that comes to my mind. And then also it also talked about how we oftentimes do it wrong, where we tell people, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're feeling," and it's like, no, you don't. You never know exactly what anyone's feeling. You can relate to it, but you never know exactly what someone's feeling. So like, making sure that you validate without going too far.
That's a really good one too, because that's one that I've always struggled with is like, not trying to, like you said, just fix it, because that's the first thing I want to do is fix the problem, not, and actually like not going too far and like saying, yeah, I've been exactly there because you can't. And I think it's such a good one because it's a good thing to keep in mind. It's a very difficult one, I think, to fix. Like that knee-jerk reaction of wanting to solve problems, like it's hard to just sometimes just not
Dude, it's
and
like
just
it's like
admit.
someone when it's like someone when a family member dies, and you're like, I know exactly what you're going through. My dog died.
Yeah,
It's like I don't know.
not quite the same.
Yeah.
Still death, but yeah, a little different. My last one kind of goes well with all these, I think, which is don't assume, right? Because it makes an ass out of you and me. And I think this is
Hmm.
also where we run into problems a lot, where we assume the person knows what we're talking about, so we don't explain ourselves enough, and then we're misunderstood. We assume that they're like, they have the same beliefs as we do. We make all kinds of assumptions, and then we just, we're not communicating clearly because they're rash and not being understood.
Dude, that one is huge. I just finished listening to this book called How to Not Die Alone, and it talked all about these assumptions that we have going into relationships, like particularly marriage. And it's quite shocking because, like, when it was talking about when people get into relationships and they consider marriage, they each go into it with their idea of what marriage would be. And very often do they actually talk about what it actually will be for them or what it means to them. So, not assuming that's important.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good example too of one where like it can really hurt you later down the road because you think something's going to be a certain way and it's totally not because you never talked about it or you never made clear like, and so many problems are solved when you make clear these stupid things ahead of time, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was a shockingly good book, and I would recommend it for anyone who struggles with relationships like I do. So,
Like we all do, I think. Oh
oh
God.
yeah, so that is it for how to communicate effectively, so you don't dare talk like me no more. And yeah, if you did enjoy that, make sure to share it with friends and family. Check us out on YouTube, also wherever you get your podcasts. This is the Existential Stoic Podcast. I'm Randy. That's Danny. I'll see you later, Danny.
Later, Randy.